Hey all, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, and today I'm talking about putting meaning into your game, which is really getting your players to care about the world they're in, your homebrewed world that you're creating, so that they have the most fun because they're going to be invested in your world. And I've learned over playing many years, there's techniques that you can use, and I'm going to talk about today, and how you can get players to care and to, feel like they're making a difference in your world, and that gives them meaning. There's a famous philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, who used to claim, he was a very pessimistic philosopher, that people wanted to live forever. That was their whole goal. And if somehow the gods that was going to promise this, it was proven that you couldn't have gods and live forever, they would discard them in a second. Well, in fact, psychologists, in modern times have said it's actually not necessarily living forever, it's that life has meaning, right? Which living forever, I suppose, gives that life have meaning. People want that meaning, and they want it in the world of D&D. Because you could say that they just want to live forever, but if your world doesn't, everything just kind of goes along one thing after another, but the players just keep living and getting higher and higher, maybe there are players that enjoy that, the shoot 'em up video game thing. I don't think so. I think it's players when they know there's a chance they could die, and they do sometimes die, but they care about the events of the world that you're creating, and they're invested in them. That's when they'll have the most fun. That's when it's satisfying. I had to run... The reason this video came up, I had to run on Monday of this week. The players had this incredibly deadly battle with these three evil elven ghost creatures, and they're astral elves. It's a long story. And it got right down to the nitty gritty. And three players were dead, 5e dead. And it got down to two left, and one died, and the other last player was like, I don't know if I'm going to run. I don't know if I can get away. They were saying this could be a TPK. And they had this could be a TPK attitude. And the guy that was dying rolled a 20 on his death save, got up, made a charge, hit 3 times. He was a monk of 4. And then the cleric got his blast, Radiance of the Dawn, and he killed it. And they lived. And that was going to be it. They were probably going to die. And I'm sitting there thinking, how do I get out of this? So after the run, they're all out in the street of my house. It was my turn to play. And I see them out there, and after like 20 minutes, I go out there, take out the garbage, right? But I'm partly going... They're probably saying, that asshole KR, he tried to kill us. And I sort of joked about it, and they said to me, no, that was a great run. That was so much fun, because not only did we kill those astral elves, but we cleared out this thing, Emel's Tavern, that they bought. They also helped clear the name of this ex-sorcerer, an insane sorcerer, another long story. And this was all part of it. They'd made an impact in this town. They're up to 7th level. They made some scores. They're investing. They invested in this monastery that had been ruined, investing in this tavern where they found the crypt of these astral elves. And, it was that investment and the fact that they had come through this battle. They knew it was going to be a deadly battle. They weren't sure how deadly. Well, it was really deadly. And it was super fun. And so this contained some of the key concepts here that I think are important if you want to give your world meaning. It's funny, my grandmother used to talk about World War II, and they had those scrap drives, rubber and metal, and people would put all their pots and pans or their tires and everything. Well, in actuality, the rubber was of very little use. Scrap iron, melting it down and whatever, cost as much energy as it produced, all this stuff. Why did they do this? Because it gave people, they were invested in the war. They were personally making sacrifices, and they were giving things of themselves. The Germans famously did not require their populace to make sacrifices. They did not want to have rationing. They did not want to have them know. And they claimed it was because, we don't need to do this, we're better. But really, it was because was their populace that invested in the war? Would they have made those sacrifices? Hard to say. They did in the West. And that meaning that they had a stake in the society itself, that they were willing to make those sacrifices. It was not for some corrupt regime. So my first rule on giving meaning to your world and getting the players to invest is you must have storylines and NPCs they care about. You have to construct the way your world interacts and the way the players are there such that they are part of that world and they care about what happens in that world. Here's another thing. People sometimes will say, their backgrounds. I'll use the players' backgrounds. The thing about backgrounds is that's in the past. In storytelling, that's all just, filler. We don't need anything that's going on. We want to know what's going on in the future. So even if you have a character or a storyline or something that's based on a player's backstory, move forward with it. Have things change. New things develop. Some person disappears. Some person is in trouble that they know. And then when the players get involved with that, they have to care about it. I had these bandits, this place Dagger's Rest, and the characters used to go through here and stop. It's halfway on the road to a city in this wild area called the Barren Hills. The players stopped there, and these bandits were hanging around. And there was a little girl that worked at the Dagger's Rest, like 10 years old. And the bandits were trying to goad these players into fighting them, but the players had something to do. And this is a neutral party, one chaotic good character. But one of the bandits, as the little girl ran by with buckets of water, he tripped her. She fell in the dirt. And all the bandits laughed. And the players were like, no, we're not doing that. And they started blasting. And a big battle, and all this stuff happened. Why? Because you can't, even an imaginary little girl getting kicked over by a bunch of thugs. You got to be kidding me. And I added that kind of as a flavor thing, like they were the scum of the scum bandits. I didn't think to myself, well, this will make them attack. But it did, because they cared. And they had this on-running battle. And then eventually the bad guy was a tiefling warlock. It was a she. Bought Dagger's Rest and had the bandits run it and put up a plaque to all these bandits that had been killed with the players' names. And you talk about ticking them off. And they're like, we're taking that plaque down. In fact, they have a whole plan to build a side road and divert it and drive her out of business and all this stuff. And the thing about all that is that gets the players incensed. That gets them involved in your world. It gives the world meaning. It isn't just rolling mechanical battles. It isn't just winning all the time and getting all the treasure. All those things are great, and maybe you have players that want to do that. But the real investment comes when there are storylines they care about. Are we going to save the city? You know, the classic Seven Samurai. There's a village that needs, warriors, a group of adventurers, but we can only pay you 5 copper each. Or there's the, Grand Vizier who needs guards that he'll pay 100 gold a week, but you're going to be beating up people and torturing them and doing all this stuff. Or let's just say sitting around in his mansion, just sitting there for 100 gold a week. What are the players going to do? They're going to go for the village, right? Because they care about that, especially if you throw some stuff in there about the background or they know people or they run in and they see the people, They're going to do that because that's something that gives their activities, their purpose in the world, meaning, right? We're not just here to live forever and win. The classic Twilight Zone episode of the gangster that dies and he's at the casino and all the girls love him and he wins at, roulette and he wins at blackjack and everything's going great. And he realizes, well, this sucks. And he says to the the manager, hey, I guess I should be in the other place. And he goes, what do you mean? Well, I should be in hell. And he goes, oh, you are in hell, my friend, right? Winning for no reason is hell. Another technique that I've always used, much to my players, both, terror and enjoyment, is to have some encounters that are on the edge. And when I mean on the edge, I mean things could go bad. If all the encounters are easy or if all the encounters are hard, but it's obvious when things get a little out of hand, they get some bad rolls or whatever, you kind of, fudge things or make, no. You want to set them up on the edge and you can just practice if you want to, if it's your first GM experience or something, practice putting them on the edge, have some of those battles. But you want to take things right to the edge because that gives battles meaning. That makes them count. And if we're going to go and roll initiative, and especially when we get up in level, depending on the system you're running, there are systems that all the battles take 5 minutes, okay. But if you got battles that take an hour or more than an hour, they got to have meaning. And the only way I know that they have meaning is if there's a risk of death, right? If the players know. Now, you could warn players about this. This is another tactic that sometimes, if I tell the players this is a deadly area, they won't go there because they know I kill people, right? They know I have this keep of Niz I'm trying to get the players to go to. They won't go because I've talked about, it's legendary in my world. And I do, and of course the higher levels are not as deadly as the lower, but whatever. If you're watching anyone out there that's in my campaign, I just, gave you a little bit away because I do want them to run. But they're not doing it because they know my world is deadly. And there are other things that they have to do that they've had to do where they know it was deadly, but they cared, right? If those bandits had been much more powerful, they would have figured out, come back, set up a deal, give them an advantage. They were going to get those guys because they cared, right? So you can say it's super deadly, you better watch out. But if they've invested in this, if the entire world is going to be destroyed, you don't have to have stakes that are that big all the time. Although we'll get to that because you do kind of want to have that as an undercurrent at some level. But you want them to know that when they win a battle, just like they were outside my house talking, they were out there for an hour talking. Because I looked out there, I was like, wow, it's 11 o'clock, and they're still out there talking. They were very excited. It was a close thing. It wasn't for that 20, I don't know what I was going to do, because it could have been a TPK. Which leads me to another thing is you must kill players. I know this is the hardest thing. Hardest thing for a GM to do is kill players, unless you're some kind of sadistic person and people won't run in your world. Do I enjoy killing players? No, it's the worst thing ever. Do I give them every opportunity not to die? We're all looking and scrambling and trying to look at the rules and figure out stuff, but I'm playing it by the book. I'm saying this happened and then this happened and then this happened. So we've been playing since November in my in-person campaign, and in that time, 9 months, 5 characters have died. Right? Now, a lot of you, maybe you're in your campaigns, that happens all the time. I know like Critical Role, a lot of the online games I watch, they don't have deaths like that, right? But I do, because most of the time when the players do that, they made a mistake. They made a series of big mistakes, and they learn from those. I've also had, I think, 3 of the players have never lost their characters. It's been 3 others. So those players, and in this last battle, one of these characters that had been there since the beginning, he was dead, and it looked like he was gone. He's the one that rolled the 20 on the death save, right? If you don't have the fear of death, your world lacks meaning. That's my opinion, and you can disagree, and I'm sure there's plenty of people, hey, give me a comment and tell me why I'm wrong. But I just don't think that a world where there's no chance that you can die has meaning, or the same level of meaning, the same level of investment as when it doesn't. And the thing is, when you warn them all the time, well, this is deadly, okay, they'll stay away. They stay away from the keep and niz, and there's probably not anything I can do about it because they know my world is deadly. But when you're wandering in the wilderness and you have a random encounter, a wandering monster, it could be deadly. It could be over the top, unfair, screw job, it can be. You don't want to do it all the time because then they'll never wander like the keep and niz. They won't go anywhere, right? They'll just be like, well, it's just too deadly to go outside. So you can't have that. But every once in a while, they should have a random encounter that is on the edge or over the edge. Time to run. Time to figure out what can we do to get away from this and not just roll initiative and have a battle, because we could be killed. Or we're backed into a spot. We did something wrong. We went to an area we shouldn't have. We made some mistakes, and now we're in this encounter, and we may all die. And then when you get to the end, you can scramble and just with the players, and you guys can all sit there and try to figure out, but you're saying, this is the way the world works. You go out in the wilderness, and every once in a while, not very often, not every session, not every third session, or maybe every fourth. I don't know. You don't have to necessarily keep tabs. But every once in a while, there's an encounter that they could all die. Or a player or 2 could die. And that gives going out into the wilderness meaning, right? Now, again, the most important thing is to create NPCs and storylines that the players care about. And this is the thing, the entire arc of your campaign at some level should be something the players really care about. So the fate of the material plane is a classic one. If these creatures come through this gate, we're all destroyed and the world is ended and it's a, hellscape or something like that. That's the classic choice. But it could be just something where, you have a corrupt society and these players have a chance to do something to right the wrong. Because, in the real world, societies are, the world's not fair, right? Well, the D&D world might not be fair either. But it's a fantasy game. Maybe there's an opportunity to make it fair or just a little bit fairer. Maybe there's a Return of the King type thing where there's some ruler that could be restored to the throne, but the players have to do this and this. They have to find some item. They have to find some book that tells the truth. They have to, some divine magic, something like this that the players do so that this ruler is back on the throne. And it wasn't that, the world would have just gone on the way it was, let's say. It wasn't just that it's all going to end. It doesn't have to be Sauron. If you want to, that's great. But what I would say is start small. Start with just a few inklings. In the beginning, Sauron just sort of reappeared in a little area before he could reassert himself. And he slowly got power and he corrupted Saruman and all that kind of stuff. So if you're going to have some final death deal, that's what you do. What I'm doing in my current world, I have these ancient giant race, the Illyrith, and they have this technology and they destroyed themselves, their mental powers. And the players are slowly but surely learning about this. And they're learning that as people in the world start to investigate this, those mental energies will destroy any sentient creatures. They can't take this. They can't be gods, right? They'll fight each other at a level. They'll just be destroying each other, right? And they're realizing this, and they're figuring out a way. They're slowly but surely realizing this technology should not be in the hands of mere sentient creatures. So they're trying to do that, and they're getting there. And this is in the background. Meanwhile, I have the things like the little girl that's kicked, the shop owner that's harassed by thugs, the gambling hall that murders people. All sorts of little things that they find out about, and it directly impacts them. I have this childhood friend of one of the players that has disappeared. He came to them with a thing, they ignored him, and he went off, and it looks like he might be dead. Now they're involved, and they're feeling guilty, and they're going to do something about it. Because even though it's imaginary, as I've said this over and over, the Breaking Bad people are just actors. And you can see the blooper reels on YouTube all day long. But when you're watching the show, you're worried they're going to get killed. Or when one of your favorite characters does get killed in that show, which a lot do, you're bummed, right? You believe it's the fictional paradox. We know they're not real, and yet we feel like they're real. Well, that's the way it should be in your D&D world. And I said the most important thing is that NPCs and storylines, but actually, as I'm talking about this, I think there's one more that's maybe equally or more important. And that's that in a homebrewed world, your players can change the outcome of your world. They control the storylines. Because the thing about a module is it's written out, whether adventure path or just one shots that you string together or whatever. You're just reading from a book, and maybe you make changes in it, but it's someone else wrote it out. Right? And in the homebrewed campaign, you're setting up the framework and you're setting up the stories, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the players are going to do. And then you as a GM have fun because you react to the things they do, and it gives your world meaning. Because if we go all the way back to those, philosophers that talked about, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Heidegger, all these sort of existentialists who said, man's search for meaning and there is none, the world is meaningless. Well, then life becomes an aesthetic experience. Because things like art, music, dance, writing, novels, everything, all this stuff why do we create it? We create it to give life meaning, to sort it out. Maybe it's to be a pessimistic sort of thing and say life is meaningless, but, look at how beautiful it is or something like that. But that's what provides meaning. Well, D&D is, in that sense, an aesthetic experience, where in a homebrewed campaign, as I say, is the highest. Because you're creating this whole thing out of your mind, and the players interact, and then they create things through their activities. And they create that meaning, and you do that together. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If your players find meaning, and even if they almost die, even if things don't go their way every time, even if they have all sorts of setbacks and failures and NPCs die, I guarantee you they'll be outside your house for an hour talking about it and be totally excited. Now, maybe they were just telling me that because I walked out there like, what's the problem? But I don't think so. I don't think they would have stood there for an hour and talked about it. So hopefully that was helpful to you. I'd love to hear your techniques for making things happen. I also want to say my Discord channel, a lot of this discussions that I'm getting, we're talking about encounters and monsters and, different systems we want to play and all this stuff. It's a lot of GMs that are dealing with a lot of things that, if you've ever GM'd, you deal with. How do we make it fun for my players? So please give me some comments on that. And most importantly, my friends, as always, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you want, and tell somebody else about it.